last thing you know of him.
Right. Which is, the way you're supposed to do it.
Yeah, exactly. The following day, which would have been April 16th.
Yeah.
Investigators find his car either 45 or 55 miles away from the home that he shared with Patty, which is in Lewisburg. And it was in the parking lot of an antique mall that Ray liked, I believe. I've also seen some reports that it was in the parking lot of a park.
Really?
Yes. And that plays in a little bit in another theory.
Yeah.
I've seen pictures of both parking lots as well. It kind of looks like one is across the street from the other, and I'll be honest with you, I have not gone out to Google Street View to really check that out.
Because it's not all that important.
No, it's a gravel lot across the street from this.
Mm-hmm.
And the
or it's
mall,
in the Antiques Mall.
No, not in it. It's across the street from it. And it's the Antiques Mall is just an old industrial building that's been converted into sort of a mall kind of thing with like stalls.
Right.
But
yeah. Like a flea market.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
In his car,
is not him.
Is not him. There's no sign of him. There's no sign of his keys. There's no sign of his wallet. There's no sign of his county-issued laptop, though his county-issued cell phone was in his car, and I'm under the impression that was his only cell phone. Originally, when I started doing the research, I thought surely he had a personal cell phone as well, but I have not actually seen any mention of that, so I'm going to assume that his county-issued cell phone was his only cell phone.
That could be.
In 2005, I don't know that would have been so... I mean, my mom didn't get a cell phone until 2005, and it was
I was saying, in 2005, a 60-year-old man has no interest in a cell phone.
He has one because he has to have one for work.
And he probably hated it.
Yeah. There were no signs of foul play around the car, but according to police reports, the car smelled like cigarette or cigar smoke, even though Ray was apparently like an avid anti-smoker. He hated the smell of smoke.
Did not like cigarettes at all.
Yeah. But his car smelled like cigarette smoke, and they found a fleck of ash on the back seat, which, okay, fine, whatever.
Well, I heard it was more than a fleck, but I mean, it was not a huge amount.
Some ash,
there was some cigarette ash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Family members, upon hearing that Ray was missing, his nephew particularly, drove up to come kind of help out with the investigation. They showed up. They show up in Lewisburg and immediately think, and there's this interview that I watched with a nephew, and he says, I immediately just thought, oh my God, here we go again. Because Ray's car was parked in a parking lot next to a park near a bridge over a river, and that's exactly how they found his father's stuff. Ray's brother.
The nephew's father.
The nephew's father. That's how they found his car before they found out that he had killed himself.
By jumping off a bridge.
Yeah. So the family immediately thought, oh my God, Ray killed himself just the exact same way.
At least according to the nephew.
According to the nephew.
Who really likes to be in front of a camera.
Well, he calls himself the official media liaison of the family.
Yeah, nobody else in the family really wants to talk about it.
They really don't. But I mean, it was his father who killed himself, so I can understand why he would immediately just be like, "Oh my God,
really.
Well, why?" So
all right. All right. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, they search the river. They find nothing. Nobody. They search all around the antique mall, all around the town, and we'll talk about some of that stuff in a little bit. But there's no Ray. Ray doesn't show up. Eventually, they kind of start to scale back the search a little bit because you can't do full-on manhunt forever.
Not really, no.
The FBI analyzes Ray's credit records. Nothing. His money's not touched.
Card activity.
Nothing's going on. They continue to scale back a little bit. Then, on July 30th, 2005, fishermen in the Susquehanna River found a laptop, which was kind of caked with mud.
It was sitting on the bottom.
It was sitting,
because they used a net to
It was
retrieve
sitting on the bottom, but it was really caked with mud and stuff like that. And they immediately turned it over to the police. I'm not sure if it's because they thought it would be connected to this case or not, but they turned it over to the police.
If you look at the photos of it, it's got county property tags on the back of it.
Of course, they always do that.
Yeah, so I'm sure that these guys probably wiped it off and went, we should probably tell somebody.
So
maybe the county will give us a reward.
Yeah. So they turn it over to the cops, and the cops give it to their computer forensic expert, who immediately realizes there's something very wrong with this computer because it just doesn't have a hard drive in it.
Oh, I thought it was because it's full of water.
Yeah. So there's no hard drive in this thing. So obviously there's nothing. There's nothing they can do about it.
Well, it's got a fish screensaver.
Yeah. Fish swimming on it. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if there's no hard drive in a computer, it's not going to do anything.
It's useless at that point.
Not.
There's all the fun information is on the hard drive.
Yeah, although interestingly, I will briefly mention, not that I necessarily think it pertains to this case, but one can pull a hard drive out of a computer, out of a laptop, and plug in via a USB, either a flash drive or an external hard drive, and run an operating system on that. Steve is looking at me like I'm a crazy person.
Oh, I understand that you can do that. I don't understand the implications in this case.
I don't know that there are any, but I just want to throw that out there as something that is possible.
Well, I think that I thought about this very thing too, and that is if somebody had Ray's laptop, but they didn't know his password, but they wanted information off of that, then removing the hard drive and plugging it in as an external drive to another computer would be a way around that, assuming the files on the hard drive haven't themselves been encrypted.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, maybe I'm dumb.
Yeah.
But if the files on the hard drive are under my profile and therefore are locked behind my password, firewall, whatever you want to call it, and you plug in another hard drive to operate the computer,
That's not what we're saying. We're saying that you remove the hard drive from one computer and plug it into a different computer.
The hard drive into it. Hard drive goes from original computer to second computer?
Yeah.
And then how are you accessing the contents of it?
I've done the same thing. It's a couple of Mac Minis that I retired.
So you're just going through a back door to get to the file tree and find things that way?
It just opens. It's like a file that appears on your desktop when you plug in. It's like plugging in a USB stick or something like that.
I got it. It's much like a plug and play flash drive. Okay, that's the part that I wasn't getting. I was like, well, if the OS is locked behind its password, what the hell good does it do?
Well, and the OS would continue to be, but the files are not.
They're technically still...
They're still just files
accessible.
Hanging out on a
Now I understand it. I've done the very same thing.
Right.
I know what you're getting at. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's interesting, as well as if he did have something to hide for some reason, you wouldn't necessarily have the hard drive in the computer, in the laptop.
You just want to take it out.
That you could have something that you would be able to disconnect from the computer. I know I have a lot of friends who do stuff like this, where they... don't necessarily want people to just be able to log onto their computer or take their actual computer. They have to have two parts of the puzzle, right? Anyway, that's a long tangent to say it's possible that somebody removed the hard drive and had access to the files otherwise.
Was accessing the files.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It was
people would have had different motives.
Yeah. It was also missing the slide-in CD
tray?
Tray, thank you. I'm doing this motion.
I love the hand motion that you're doing, and somehow I figured that out.
It's the tray.
Or I did my reading. One of the two.
I'm trying to remember this. In 2005, were we still using floppy disks back in those days?
No.
Okay.
When did we go to DVDs and CDs and all that stuff?
It depends on how new the model would have been.
This was a relatively new computer. I did a bunch of looking into this stinking computer. Yeah. This thing you could get, it was a Micron, which was actually a fairly expensive computer at the time. And you could get, there were several different options that you could get, one of which was the CD. You could get the 3.5-inch floppy drive. That was an option, because I actually had the 3.5-inch floppy drives from not too long prior to that. I still had some sitting around. This computer also had the capability, I believe it's in the photos you'll see when it's open and you're looking at it from the front, there's a hole in the left side, which is actually a separate second hard drive. It had a second external hard drive that was a push button. It could have. Like it was meant for the business professional, had all these different configurations available.
Well, I would suspect that he had a floppy drive, just given that it was the government. And if you had to look at historic stuff like that, you would be on...
He didn't have a floppy because it was floppy or CD. Floppy or CD is what I understood. Now, the information on Micron is hard because Micron went under. They became, I love it, they became MCP from Tron. And then they went away.
Yeah.
So the information of what their models were is kind of tough to dig up. It was battery in front, external hard drive here, CD drive here, and the removable the actual physical hard drive was somewhere center-ish.
And that was the internal. So it was the internal hard drive that was removed, right? And found on the beach. Or found on the bank.
Okay, whatever. Fine. So Joe has spoiled the fact that a few months later, I think it was a few months. It was either 2 months or in the end of October 2005. Hard to tell.
It was, October.
A mom and her kid found the hard drive and the CD tray just like in the mud on the banks of the river.
The hard drive was found with the CD tray?
Pretty sure. Maybe not. Maybe
I think the CD tray was still in the computer.
But all the pictures you see of it are...
They're all laid out because they're rusty, ucky bits.
Yeah, it's pulled out of it. So yeah, I guess that's probably an unfair assumption on my part that it was missing. But the hard drive was definitely missing, and it was found a couple months later. Also...
And it was like 100 yards away from where they found the computer.
Yeah. But also, also caked on mud and all that stuff, so... The police decide to turn the hard drive over. It's obviously
this is after
waterlogged.
They found it. No.
After they find the hard drive, obviously. They turn it over to the CIA, I believe it was.
I thought it was the Secret Service.
Oh, Secret Service, thank you. Yeah. And the Secret Service says, we can't, there's nothing on here that's usable. This is totally ruined.
Mud, water.
There's this private firm that we use to recover all the data from the Challenger. When it exploded, they're pretty good at this stuff. Let's pass it on to them and see what they can find. And that firm came back and said, nah. No,
you're in luck.
There's
no way. Which is interesting.
Well, I assume they took it apart and they discovered that probably, there's in a hard drive, there's a disk in there, or disks.
Mm-hmm. There were. Not anymore. They don't make them that way anymore. But yeah.
Yeah, they probably found out.
And those things are kind of delicate.
Well, they are, and like some months in the water, and there's going to be some corrosion and stuff. There's no chance you're going to recover data from those things.
Yeah.
No, that's the thing, is the Challenger, it was flung from way far up high and took some heat and some radiation, but that was a brief impact and brief amount. So, go figure, it was still usable, whereas when it's sitting in the mud...
Yeah, it's not.
Think about the mud does to your shoes.
Yeah.
Let alone what it would do to your computer.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, this was found in open air on the bank, right?
It was.
Yeah.
It was like the mud, but yeah. It wasn't underwater.
Yeah, that's one thing. You can immerse something in water for an extended period of time, but it doesn't necessarily start to rust or oxidize until
as soon as you get it
exposed to air.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this thing had been sitting in the air, so it was rusty as hell.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can look at pictures of this, and it's definitely they're messed up. The computer and the hard drive both. So nothing, and that really let the investigators they were heartbroken. I think everybody with the case were heartbroken because they found the hard drive and they were thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to solve this thing.
I don't see how anybody could have looked at that thing and gotten their hopes up.
Yeah, I don't know either. But hey.
It's a clue after
I guess.
God knows how much time.
Yeah, absolutely. Divers, pretty sure that, we found Ray's computer. That must mean that his body's somewhere down there. Do another dive. They search extensively. Nothing. They don't find anything. So finally, they decide...
I should mention this. I was looking on, I think it was on Reddit. Some local guy that lives in the area, said that in the Susquehanna River, people drown all the time. He says the body always turns up.
Yes.
It might not be found by the police, but sooner or later somebody finds it washed up on shore.
And we'll talk about that more in theories.
Sorry, am I stopping on your stuff again?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
Yes, but it's fine.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Cut it out.
Finally, in April 2009, police reveal that prior to Ray's disappearance, just a couple days prior to Ray's disappearance, somebody had used the personal computer at Ray and Patty's house to search how to wreck a hard drive, how to fry a hard drive, water damage to notebook computer.
Question about that?
Mm-hmm.
I made some phone calls to try to get answers to these questions, which was when exactly did these searches take place? Because everybody says they took place before he disappeared, but I've never heard anybody actually pin down the actual dates of when
I haven't either. No, I haven't either. Also haven't heard why the police waited so long to say that had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And...
Well, sometimes they want to keep some certain details secret.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why. But I still, it's very frustrating to me. I called the cold case unit at the Pennsylvania State Police, and of course they didn't call me back. But I wanted the answer to that question was exactly when were those searches made, if anybody even knows. They could have been made after he disappeared.
They could have been.
Everybody assumes that they were made before, but I'm not so sure that that's the case.
Well, I think they likely, they would have had to have found that information on the computer within a day or two of Ray disappearing.
Well, and my other thing, Joe, is that if those searches had come up after Ray had disappeared, that brings to light a whole nother set of implications.
Oh, it does. It does.
That
definitely.
says somebody close to him is involved, and you know that they would have then looked at Patty and anybody else that had access, but I'm assuming that it comes out the way it does because it was something that he had done a week, a month, or something in advance, and they pulled his search history.
I just want to put this in context to say that Ray was retiring.
Yes,
and he had actually been physically, personally asking people in the office, "Hey, how do you totally wipe a hard drive?" And I have heard from other people who have been district attorneys or served
it's not uncommon
that it's not uncommon to want to do something like that after you've left office. You've got a computer, you want to wipe your stuff. He apparently kept a daily journal on his hard drive of his own personal feelings about things and all of that stuff. And I think it's likely that before turning that computer back over to the county, he would have wanted to wipe it clean. And so I think, by water, that's weird. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm totally willing to say, how to fry a hard drive with water, those are all weird things, but just his interest in how to wipe a hard drive is not so weird to me.
No, it's not weird at all. But the strings, some of these strings really set off my BS meter a lot. Like, for example, water damage to notebook computer. Can you imagine yourself entering that search string in Google?
Yeah.
Really?
Why? I mean, I can't following how to wreck a hard drive.
Water does to a hard. You know exactly what water's
no.
going to do.
No. Let's roll it back though. You're assuming that Ray has a semi-decent grasp on how computers work, and not everybody does. And he may have been Googling how to wipe a hard drive, and then something said, or if your computer was immersed in water, he's like, oh, well, what does that do? Water in, notebook computer in water. Like, he may have been following. I do that. We do that all the time, where we take a phrase out of an article and start searching that phrase to understand what it means. He may have had no idea.
I can only tell you, I know what happens when I drop my TV into the bathtub. I know what happens when I drop my laptop into the bathtub.
Well,
everybody knows this.
This is why we keep telling you to stop watching TV in the bathtub.
Oh, I know. I'm tired of getting electrocuted too. But here's the thing: everybody knows that electronics, when exposed to water, are going to be destroyed. We all know this.
Well, and
Ray knew this, I'm sure.
So can we put a pin in this discussion and start talking about it again in theories? Because I think this conversation's going there. We have more stuff, Steve.
All right, so
I know.
Back to the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, seriously. And I guess the thing that I'll echo, not about the actual queries, but why, if you search on a home computer, you know that search is going to get found. You would have known that.
Well, not necessarily Ray, not necessarily.
If you don't know, I mean, I don't know, maybe. I don't know.
You just jumped from one side to the other, Devin, with that statement.
The reason that I say that is because his colleagues say that. His colleagues say he would have known that would have found that. Because, I mean, he was part of investigative teams. He would have seen this happen a lot. He would have seen that people were able to go on a computer and see what people were searching. He would have known that from investigations he had seen. He would know. So that's one of the things, again, we'll talk about this more in theories, but to me, that means that he planned to come home.
That was Devin pointing and saying, Steve, shut up.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
You're right.
So, I think you're right about that, though.
So.
And that's why we'll talk about it later, but I have my own theory about these search strings.
Awesome.
And how they wound up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will talk about that in a minute.
Google.
Yeah.
That's okay, but that's the last we heard.
In terms of details about
the case. In July of 2011, Laura Griecar, the adopted daughter, petitioned to have the court declare Ray legally dead, which they granted. So he is legally dead now.
It had been 6 years.
It had been, 6 years. This is one of the other things. There have been a lot of sightings, quote-unquote sightings of Ray.
Him and Elvis.
And actually, as it turns out, the police, every time they get one of these reports, they follow up on it, it sounds like. Everybody that I've heard who's actually seen the evidence says that really the bulk of the evidence are these manila envelopes that the police have of each of the quote-unquote sightings and how they followed up with it. This one, however, was pretty interesting. It was literally one day after Ray was declared legally dead. A man in Utah was arrested, and he strongly resembled Ray. He was being charged with a misdemeanor, but he refused to give his name. Apparently, he resembled Ray. He had the same height, the same weight. He had the same lips and the same wrinkles.
Same lips?
Lips, yeah. And like very similar wrinkles. And I've seen pictures of both these guys. He does look a lot like Ray. And so the authorities in Pennsylvania immediately sent Ray's fingerprints to Utah, thinking like, oh my God, we found him. Or, I mean, you know, we found him. And it turns out no match. They eventually identified the guy, and he wasn't Ray.
If I had to guess, this guy was pulling one of those stupid things that people tell each other. If you say nothing and you don't tell them who you are, then they can't book you. Like
Oh yeah, one of those like.
One of those
hacks to get out of arrest.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what this guy. It sounds like that's what this guy was doing.
And he just had the bad misfortune to
happen to look like a
exactly
missing district attorney.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, actually, you know, in the interim between when they thought he might be Ray and when they had confirmed that he wasn't, he probably got treated better.
Probably.
Otherwise.
Frankly, probably he did. You're right. Yeah.
And he's going to tell all of his other homeless buddies, dude, if you don't say who you are, suddenly they upgrade your cell. They take all the other guys out. You get great food. You got to try it.
Yeah.
They start calling you sir.
Yeah.
Crazy. Theories? You want to talk about theories?
Okay.
We're pretty close. Let's talk about this first theory.
We never do it, but let's do it.
Let's do it this time. We'll do it. The first theory is that Ray was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple different ways this could have gone. You know, he was prosecuting murderers and rapists and generally bad people.
And, you know,
so even before he was a DA.
drug dealers and stuff. And
yeah, even before he was district attorney. And then
before he came to Pennsylvania?
Yeah, and then again, you know, when he was
as the ADA?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, before even before he moved to Pennsylvania.
Right, so prior to Pennsylvania, and then when he was the ADA.
Yeah, he was also doing that. Sorry. His whole career, basically, we can just say, he was charging bad people with the stuff they should have been charged with, so it's possible that one of those things could have come back and bit him. However, we're just going to get this one out of the way. The one that everybody likes to say is somebody close to the Jerry Sandusky scandal killed Ray.
Exactly.
And furthermore, they actually killed Roy as well. Now, here's how this theory plays out. Steve is like gonna just explode, but here's how this theory plays out. Roy gets killed, in this theory, gets killed just about when the first allegations of Jerry Sandusky's
sexual
abuse
misconduct
would have maybe gone onto Ray's radar.
To set an example to Ray.
So,
to send a message.
Well, so somebody comes up to Ray and says, hey, I heard your brother died. I'm really sorry about that. It'd be a shame if, somebody started prosecuting this case. It's pretty big, pretty high profile. It'd be a shame.
Yeah,
I don't buy it.
I know
I don't buy this at all, but this is something you will see on the internet a lot.
Here's the deal, is that if there were Penn State alumni and other heavies like that, they wouldn't be going after the DA. They would be actually having Sandusky murdered.
The DA is the last guy that you try and strong arm.
Yeah.
Well, so that theory actually often gets tied in with Sandusky just ended up being the fall guy. This is a huge ring. Everybody in the higher ups in the Penn State athletic department are participating in this, blah, blah, blah. I don't buy any of that. For the record, I do not buy any of that. But that's kind of where this theory ends up, is that it's the alums weren't mad that this whole abuse thing was happening. They were mad that somebody might prosecute it, and that it was this huge ring, and they were trying to keep it under wraps.
Sandusky is a red herring.
Yeah, basically. In this theory.
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
I personally feel that he's a red herring to the Greek arcade.
I would agree with that.
I agree too, yeah.
But so that's how that theory tends to run. Another point to bring up is that, if somebody involved with the Sandusky case were trying to silence people, they wouldn't be silencing the DA, they'd be silencing witnesses. which I know is a harsh thing to say, but they would be going after the witnesses. They wouldn't be going after.
I think that what they would have done is
him.
like they would have paid Sandusky to retire. A lot easier than murdering people.
Yep.
They would have paid him. They said, "Dude, you take your retirement. You move to the other side of the country. We don't ever want to hear from you again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Change your name.
Yeah.
So if you get arrested,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
That's what they would have
So
done.
I totally agree. Totally agree. But we do have to talk about this because that's that's like the first thing that comes up to everybody.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so if we move away from the Sandusky angle,
let's do it.
then where is what else is in the murder most foul category?
The murder most foul. I have one more thing about Sandusky. I'm sorry, before we move away, that people bring up as being kind of weird is that there's literally no mention of Ray Griecar being involved with this Sandusky case in Griecar's stuff. So, the person who took over for him as DA had access to literally all his files and didn't know that Ray had actually even been a part of Sandusky at all.
Yeah, there was nothing. There was no file.
There's nothing in his files.
Well, but he wasn't pursuing a case. It was with the police.
But he did a sting.
But the police did it, and we have all that information from the police because they were the one running it all.
I'm sure the DA's office would have had a file on it, probably.
Yeah. So it's a little weird, but also it's not really that weird.
Well, it's not that weird because, I mean, this is where the conspiracy theory maybe does make sense, because if there's embarrassing material about Sandusky in the DA's files, it's possible that somebody could have bribed somebody who worked in that office to remove the file and destroy it.
Yeah.
That's entirely possible.
Yeah. But then murder Ray? That's
no.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So.
Paperwork gets misplaced and files accidentally get corrupted all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's much more plausible to me than this DA 7 years later.
Well, although it would also give a reason to have the hard drive be destroyed, right? If they thought, well, there's obviously copies of these on the hard drive, then we've got to destroy the hard drive as well.
Maybe.
But again, I don't.
Do you want to talk about the hard drive for a second? Do you mind if we jump to that since we're talking about it?
The hard drive? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the hard drive.
The hard drive in that computer is held in place by a single set screw.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen a set screw in a laptop?
It's a set screw and a pull button.
No.
Yeah.
No. On the Micron, it was a set screw. I looked at again. I was pulling up the manuals, and it's a single set screw that holds the friggin' thing in. And those set screws are always teeny tiny, the size of something that's in your eyeglasses.
I think I see where you're going. Is you're saying that it might have just gotten knocked out accidentally?
The whole thing goes in the water, and it begins to corrode, and that set screw is either A, not high quality, and it degrades enough that the thing just pops out, or B, it just comes loose. I mean, I've had computers where there was a screw that constantly was loosening itself, and I had to tighten it back up. So when you're talking about somebody was pulling the hard drive to do all this stuff, I don't think it's nearly as nefarious as that. I just think that it was a crappy screw that easily came out.
Well, here's why I don't think that. And that is that if it fell out on impact with the water, then it wouldn't have been found on the riverbank. I don't see how. I mean, hard drives are not positively buoyant.
Neither are computers.
Yeah.
But the computer was found near the bank. I mean, it can wash up. Hydraulic action pushes things.
It'll push things.
I'm not disagreeing that I don't think that it fell out immediately, but I think that it came out and got caught in a current at some point.
Yeah.
But this crap happens, and I don't think that it was, I don't think that it's this amazingly secured, welded in place hard drive. It was hard drive.
No, it's not.
It's easy to remove.
It's not, but it's negatively buoyant, and it's not going to float up onto the bank, which is where it was discovered.
No, but if there's current, the current is going to shove things around that are on the bottom. That's why rocks that are in the middle of the river end up on the bank.
Well, it probably. I think more likely it's just going to flow downstream. But, I think probably somebody just pitched them over the side of the bridge, and God knows when. It could have been any time. It could have been months after the murder.
Yeah.
Or the disappearance, I should say.
Joe thinks.
Well, we're in the murder theory, so it's okay to call it murder for the moment.
Yeah.
In 5 minutes, you can't say it.
Yeah. So just one quick thing before we let Joe loose on this case. The other thing, I guess, is that when the initial report was released by the police, they said One inbound call was made to Ray's cell phone on the day of his disappearance. And then Patty started talking and saying, well, I was calling his cell phone all night.
It was going to voicemail.
It was going to voicemail, but they were inbound calls.
That's a good question. Now, I don't know the answer to this, but if your phone is shut off, and his was, and it goes straight to voicemail, does that actually get logged in as a call? It doesn't, does it?
No.
No.
Okay.
But so, eventually, somehow, and I'm not totally clear how, somebody gets a hold of the phone records and says, no, actually, there's a lot of calls, in and out, both, on the day that Ray disappeared to the number. And so the police edit their report to say, okay, well, fine, all of the calls were routine on that day.